Boxing Bros UK. Thanks for watching. Let's go.
Hello, everybody. This is Boxing Bros UK here. This is my co-host Andrew, the Boxing Brain, and we have a special guest today, Matthew Pomora. He's been published in Ring Magazine. Great guy. He's going to give us a perspective from a USA fan who lives in the USA about their boxing, what we've been trying to do for a long time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Great to be with the Boxing Bros, our friends across the pond, as we say. And again, grateful to be with you guys. You know, I'm a big fan of the sweet science, and happy to talk. Anytime I can chop it up with anybody talking boxing. I tell you guys, yesterday I had a quick impromptu but fun lunch with the commish, Randy Gordon. Randy, who's getting inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Him and I had lunch together, and it was like we were together for about an hour and change, and it felt like 5 minutes, and we could have stayed another 4 hours talking. So I love chopping it up, talking boxing, and going. So thanks for having me, and super excited.
Lovely. You'll fit right in here, mate. You'll fit right in here on this.
I see the bald thing. That works out good. Bald, facial hair. Like this, I got this thing.
Yeah, with all the bald is. I need to actually. I'm doing a bit of a cul-de-sac going on.
All brothers from another mother going on here.
So, firstly, basically, what this video is about is USA boxing. To me, especially when I was growing up, it was the mecca of boxing. Like it was
90. Yeah,
you had to fight in America to make that was the big thing. All the British fighters, all the European fighters, that was their aspirations. I want to fight in Vegas for a world title. Like they would love that. And now it seems like it doesn't mean that like it did back then. Like it's changing. It's more, I think, Saudi probably because of the money. But the American boxers, they're not getting the love that they used to. You know. We'll get specific. We'll start with the Times Square card. What's your view on that? How did it work, and what the fuck is going on with the box?
So, all right. So, full disclosure on the Times Square card. I still think that was a brilliant idea. I absolutely loved that they did it. I personally, and I thought on paper those were three main event level fights. I'm not going to shit all over it like everybody else. The fights are dreadful. I mean, let's just be honest. The fights are dreadful. I had very high hopes for Ramirez. He was absolutely awful. You know, I love T.O. He's a local guy. His father and I are, I know his dad pretty well. Great guy. So I wanted to see them do better. I personally would have mixed in some local fighters on the card to make it a little spicier. Now, the part of the story that nobody's really talking about, number one, from what I understood, and I didn't apply for a credential because I write for NY Fights. I didn't apply for a credential, but from what I understood, they were not giving out credentials to boxing journalists. And I don't know that for a fact, but that's what I was told, that they wanted to keep it almost exclusively the Ring Magazine team, who I love and I have a lot of respect for, but that was the first thing I heard. So I'm not 100% sure on that. So your listeners should verify that. But the second thing was it just didn't work. The three fights were dreadful fights. You know, one of a guy I'm buddies with, he's actually my partner in the LIBC, said, I've seen better fights at 2 a.m. In Times Square than I saw there for free.
Out of the bar.
Yeah, right out of the bar. There's like the heart of boxing bars in New York City is literally walking distance from where the ring was, which was Jimmy's in Times Square. So like it had all the ingredients to be super awesome. It just didn't work. It just didn't. And my understanding is they're going to try Alcatraz next. So I'll be interested to see how that shakes out. But I like the concept. I thought it was a good concept.
Yeah, I agree.
Very good crowd. The other thing I heard is that they blocked the crowd too, that you couldn't get past a certain street. You could only watch it on a big screen. You know, who knows? I was disappointed. Let's put it that way. I was absolutely disappointed at how it shook out.
There was one thing that wasn't really clear. And because obviously it wasn't there, maybe you can probably answer this for us. So what I thought would have made it amazing and the crowd could have got involved, all the TV screens in Times Square, all the advertisements, were the fights shown on all them screens where everyone can see where all the crowds were?
It wasn't, but they had a bunch of screens. They had a lot of different screens to do it. I would have done something with the ball, right? I would have had the ball drop in between rounds or something. Like I would have tried to tie that whole thing together. You know, they call Times Square the crossroads of the world, and I would have tried to. Again, I would have put I would have mixed local guys in to try to get some more local buzz. But it just,
so
I don't know.
I thought that everyone was in Times Square, but no one could see the fight. That's why.
That's a
because
good
you
point.
didn't really hear big cheers or anything. So so they could see everyone could see. Everyone who was there could see the fight. Or
yeah, there was definitely monitors. There was a lot of different monitors. I had a couple friends that went, and they couldn't get close, so they watched it. And actually, it's funny because again, I really wanted to go in person, and I really wanted to go and represent NY Fights. And I'm glad I didn't. I would have been pretty upset if I did. And then all my buddies that did go were like, bro, this was the dumbest idea. Because the other problem was, too, the local bars didn't have the fights. So, like you would think that they would have made the fight a lot more accessible. The fact that it was the Zone pay-per-view, like there's a really cool place, again, Jimmy's in Times Square, awesome spot. That's a boxing bar. But then there's like Virgil's, it's like a barbecue place. And obviously there's really cool places. Plus they've got great hotels that you could probably have seen out the window and such. I don't, it was a miss. It was definitely a miss.
Yeah, it felt flat, didn't it? Watching it seemed flat. The crowd wasn't nuts. I thought the crowd would go really. I thought the crowd would be crazy. And again, none of the fights were. There was no like gripping fights. The fights were just. Matthew, do you think that impacted the fighters because it was almost like a perfect storm of just stinkers though, because you had Garcia, obviously, you know, he took that big left hook from Ronnie Romero and looked like he didn't fancy it, but sometimes the crowd getting behind you can maybe lift you a little bit. And, you know, Devin Haney, I could understand the Haney one because he'd come off of obviously that really difficult fight against Garcia, the controversy, and he looked like a little bit of PTSD in there and he needed to just navigate it. Ramirez contributed nothing, as you say. Tio did what he had to do. Barbosa Jr. just beat our boy Jack Catterall, and I was bigging him up, Barbosa. I was thinking this could be a bit of a banana skin. Like Barbosa Jr.'s he's useful. But every single one was just flat. And it was just, I don't know, do you think it was the atmosphere maybe didn't help the fighters, or am I trying to read too much into it?
No, you know what's funny? That's why you're the boxing brain, right? Because that's a really good theory.
Thank you very much.
Because we have you just said it, but like, look, did I think that Barbosa was going to beat Tio? No, but I thought they were going to go. I thought they were going to really go. And when Tio goes, he goes. And I was like, oh, we're going to be in good shape. These guys are. This will be the best fight of the night. And it was a sting. You know, Ramirez is the guy I just can't figure. I don't know what happened to that guy because he was a killer. But I that is a good point because the crowd was not super into it. It was kind of quiet. I'm sure the sound didn't carry because you're in New York City streets. Yeah, just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because normally I've noticed, like in a lot of American fights, when the fans aren't happy, they start booing quite early.
Yeah.
And we didn't even hear any booing. Normally I'm against that. Like, you shouldn't boo your fighters. But in this instant, I think booing them would have given them the kick up the arse to start doing some work and trying to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
it was. Yeah, you're right. And the crowd just wasn't. You know what's funny too is I wonder the people that were the closest, like how much of boxing fans they were, or if they were just corporate people that were brought in, or whatever. I don't know. I'm like, that one was a big miss because I thought that was going to be like a tentpole event, and I was like, oh, this is a tentpole event. We're going to be in a great position here. Just, when I was trying to explain it, the funny part of this thing too, I was talking to different people in business, and and people like work in the city, and like, half of them didn't even know what was going on. They were like, "What are you talking about?"
Really?
Like, yeah, there's a fight in Times Square. They're like, "Oh, like what at the theater?"
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm like, no, like in the street, they're putting a ring in the middle of Times Square, and there's going to be a fight. And they were just like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" There was like, "What do you like? How is that even legit?" I'm like, no, it's a real. It's like it's sanctioned. There's a ring. There's a ref. It's not like like a cage fight or something. I'm like, these guys are like, and people didn't even know. So it was another boxing swing and miss. It's kind of like it was just a disappointment.
I don't know what happened that weekend, Matthew, because then I remember sort of watching that and thinking, I knew it wasn't going to be a good fight anyway with William Skull. I mean, I don't even know where to start with that. And I thought, oh, well, maybe that will kind of save the weekend. And that was even worse. It then had I think it's got the record CompuBox stats, hasn't it, for least punches thrown in a fight of all time. Yeah. And I think all of the fights, most of the fights are now in the bottom 5 from that weekend. And we had to rely on Little Anue to save the weekend, didn't we?
He did it. And by the way, he did it. He did absolutely save the weekend.
Yeah. But what did you make of? I know what you're going to say, but what did you make of the Canelo sort of? Facade.
Great fight. No, it was horrible. It sucked. And it was funny. You knew it was going to suck. Like there was no doubt. I wrote a preview for it in NY Fights, and like before like I won't talk journalistic integrity or anything, but like I'm a fan. I'm a fan first and foremost, right? So like I would never crap all over a fighter or anything. So like I gave it like a legitimate look. Like I went through it because my first iteration of the preview fight of the preview for the fight, my first iteration of it was this fight's going to suck, or this guy's going to lose and get killed, or he's going to get screwed. Like those are the only options, because there's no way he's losing the decision. Canelo's not going to lose a decision, no way. So I'm like, but then I was like, no, like take it seriously. Like go. I watched a lot of Skull stuff. I looked at it, I'm like, all right, you know what? He's got some size. He can maybe move. Bevel kind of laid out the blueprint, right, on how to win. He could physically, and I'm just talking myself into this. Like, and I'm even when I'm writing, I'm like, man, this just seems like bullshit. I'm like, oh, boy, this guy's
you've got to do something, haven't you? You've got to try and get something, Yeah,
I was literally like, I have so much respect for, and listen, I have a lot of respect for what Canelo has done for the sport and what he brings to the sport. But at this point in his career, he's an attraction fighter. They bring him in as an attraction. The belts are superfluous, right? At that point, like he's the money fight. Like, the fact they're putting him in with Bud, that should be an interesting dynamic. The size difference worries me for Bud.
Oh yeah, it does us. Me and Chris agree. We're a little bit concerned about that one, right up to super mid.
Yeah,
it's a dicey one.
Think De La Hoya and Bernard, right? Like sometimes you swim. You go out of your weight class. You put yourself in a tough spot. So I don't know. I was kind of. That one, I'm going to have a very hard time getting past the size advantage. And it's not like Canelo's slow. Like there's like one thing when you get like the heavyweights and they like gas out or something. Like Canelo's not slow, even if he's older. He's still not slow, and he still can bang. So I'm a little worried for Bud. I thought Errol Spence would give Bud a much better fight. I actually picked Errol. I thought Errol was going to beat him. And then Bud like mopped.
So
so definitely. But good.
And just talking about like American boxing, like Canelo, he's kind of the face of it. And then his recent fights, they've all like he keeps pulling people from lower weight classes, like Charlo, and now he's fighting Bud. Or if he fights someone in his weight class, it's someone like Skull. Like, he hasn't really been in a fight where everyone's like, I can't wait for this. Oh, who's going to win? Like since Bivol, really, that I can think of. And do you think that's having an effect? Because he's the main man in boxing in America. Is that affecting how boxing's being perceived in America?
Yeah, look, I think the challenge is in that one specifically. That's a great question because people will say as the top stars go, that's how the boxing world goes. Canelo's always going to fight. He's a point in the television. He's always going to fight on Cinco de Mayo weekend. I would have rather seen him go and take on somebody bigger. You know what it reminds me of when you just said it, Chris, I remember when Terry Norris would just call out guys like in lower, like guys that were like 2 weight classes. I remember he was always after Chavez, Julio Cesar Chavez.
Yeah.
And he would like want Chavez to come up like 2 weight classes to meet him. And I'm like, why are you fighting guys? Why aren't you guys fighting bigger guys? And I think Canelo after what happened with Bivol, I don't think he's looking to go bigger. I certainly don't think here's what you got to think from the business standpoint. Number one, he's going to get paid. So if he fights all 3 of us and we all say we'll go for 3 rounds with him and then he kills all of us in 1 round, he's still going to get paid. So people will still pay to see him. But I do think it's a law of diminishing returns because I don't think I would guarantee those numbers were atrocious to pay-per-view. I didn't look them up, but I guarantee the pay-per-view numbers were atrocious. I think having the stinker on Friday night and then that one, I can tell you this, my wife, who's a super patient with me and all the boxing stuff, by Sunday night, she was like, we are not watching boxing. I'm like, no, we got to.
Matthew, he'll tell you a story about this. His missus was like, oh, Canelo's the face of boxing. I'll watch this with you because he's like, that's the thing. Why Terence Crawford isn't more of a household name across the world. Like, I'll walk down the street and mention Canelo in my little small town. They'll probably, oh, the boxer. Crawford, who the fuck is that? They've got no. I know that's just wrong for everyone.
With the Canelo skull fight, I made my missus stay up to watch it, and we were watching the prelims, and she was like, "He's the face of boxing, that little ginger guy." I was like, "Yeah." I said, he's really good. I said he was undisputed. He's a really, really good boxer. I'm bigging him up, and then we saw that, and before she fell asleep, she went, he's not very good for the face of boxing. I went, yeah, but the guy, I'm making excuses, but the guy's not trying to fight. The other guy didn't know. It's just like, and that's a casual person who just, the first time she's watched Canelo fight, and that's what she saw. And I guarantee that she's probably not the only one. So it's like really detrimental. And how can it be
she's not going to what news to watch through, right? Yeah, look, I that's a great question. I think that part of it, you're getting somebody to watch it again. So I'm a little bit older now, so sleep is more of a premium for me. So I like that the fights are on during the day. I get I know it's nighttime for you guys, it's daytime for us. I enjoy that because those one of the things, and I know you guys had kind of mentioned this about boxing, when you're putting your best stars and your best performers on, and they're going on 11:30 at night, and they're not getting out of the ring until after midnight, and you're missing great boxing cities like Philadelphia, Boston, New York, Baltimore, are not they're seeing these fights at midnight. That's not good for the sport. And then putting everything behind a paywall. I was a DAZN. I was in the DAZN, their early group, the one that helped shape. I bought the first one. It was like $10 a month. And
bargain.
Now it's like $25 a month, and most of the fights are not on paper, or most of the fights are still back on pay-per-view. And again, I love boxing. I love the club shows, so I'm good with watching the club shows, but club level shows are not the elite shows. But it's such a bad business model. And to your point, Bud Crawford, guy's a great guy. Super smart, just got an honorary degree, all this stuff. You can't find 5 people that know who he is that are not us, guys like us.
But Dennis is another one. I mean, Jesse Bam Rodriguez, it seems to be Eddie Hearn fighters, but that's a whole other video we'll get you on talking about what's going on with Eddie Hearn. He's chucking people like Johnny Fisher in there, and AJ, we don't know what's going on with him. Fabio Wardley's probably going to absolutely bash up Justice soon. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent because that's what I do. But I wanted to bring the conversation, Chris and Matthew, too, because I've always felt, and there's a YouTuber over here called Hatman Strikes Back mentioned this, and he said, American boxing is desperate for an elite heavyweight. You kind of had it with Wilder. You know, say what you like about Wilder. He did have a world-class right hand. Everything else was shit, but that right hand. And he did put bums on seats. And you kind of look through the division, you think, Jared Anderson, don't sing, his heart's not in it. Torres Jr., we don't know enough about. Gerald Miller, I think, is the highest ranking heavyweight. And Gerald Miller, I mean, I don't know, the less said about him, the better at times. Like, what? Do you think America needs we need a superstar American heavyweight, don't we? Mike Tyson-esque. Is that too much to ask? I don't know.
Yeah, so I love the question. And I'll tell you, I'll use a funny analogy for you. I never ever got into the race stuff. I always thought the race stuff was bullshit. Like, I thought Larry Holmes was a great champ. Jerry Cooney is from Long Island, where I live. He's I actually know him now personally, but I never bought into, I never bought into any of that bullshit. Like, I never liked any of that stuff. I always thought it was terrible. Like, I love boxers. I love, and I work with a lot of, I'm friends with a lot of boxers. I know a lot of boxers. So I never bought into any of that. I always thought it was stupid. But like, the one thing I will say now, like, and I would never want to be prejudiced, but like, I really would love to see an American as the heavyweight champion of the world. Like, I think like I always said, like, I would never root for somebody based on something like that. But like, I am legit rooting for an American heavyweight, and we just don't really have him. Deontay, see, what was great about Deontay was he was he was fun to watch, right? He was very fun to watch, and he was very flawed. So when people are like, "Oh, great," but it was good because there was always that element of danger that he could lose.
Yeah,
because he was just like fire and punches.
Wild.
Yeah, that somebody could get him. So like, he was exciting, really exciting to watch. I think him not fighting Joshua is the Lennox Lewis Riddick Bowe of this. Like,
great comment
for sure.
Great
we
comment.
needed it, and like, we absolutely needed that to happen. And we go back to, and again, I hate all the race stuff. It drives me absolutely crazy. But like, I crack up. I'm like, well, there was a white heavyweight champion for like, I don't know, that's all everybody wanted was a white heavyweight champion. We had a white heavyweight champion for how many years, and nobody gave a shit. Like, so I'm like,
Vladimir Klitschko stunk the place out for about 15 years, Matthew, didn't he?
Yeah, I liked him. I liked his brother. They were not crowd pleasing. They didn't have crowd pleasing styles. And again, it's just the fact that it just didn't work. Like, it just didn't work. But I personally liked both of them. I saw Klitschko's last successful title defense in person at the Garden. And even that was a little bit of a snoozer.
Brian Jennings, right?
Yeah, that was a bit of a snoozer. Right. I got, like, he should have killed that guy. He should have knocked him out. I went to full distance. I got to meet him and his brother right before the fight. They couldn't have been nicer guys. They both look like they were carved out of granite. They were.
Mate. They're 6'7" and 8, and they're perhaps monsters.
I'm 6'3".
Right.
Those guys, I look tiny next to them. And, like, he's a great example of boxing missing the point, because like, a guy like Vlad Klitschko, who had, like, I don't know, it's probably bullshit, but he has like the doctorate. He had the doctorate. He was with a famous American celebrity woman. Like, how was that guy not a household name? It just, like, how did that not work out? How is that not something that you'd be like, okay, like, everybody wants to know who Vladimir Klitschko was, and he just wasn't. Like, it didn't happen. Most people didn't even know. That goes to the other point about the fact that, like, first off, the sanctioning bodies drive me crazy, because
like, wouldn't know where to start on that one, Matthew, honestly.
The champ, right? So my favorite is, like, we're going to have an undisputed heavyweight champion finally when Usyk goes with Dubois again. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? We have an undisputed heavyweight champion. That belt is manufactured. That's like,
I know.
He is the undisputed champion. This other Dubois belt is not a real belt. It's a manufactured title. I owe the IBF huge. They have been They've been super good to Long Island Boxing Charities. We did a fundraiser for Bobby Chet. They were kind enough to donate money, and they reissued his championship belt. So I hate saying negative things about the IBF. I hate saying negative things about the WBC. But like this is not the champion is the Ring Magazine champion. The guy who has that belt is the legitimate champion, the man who beat the man who beat the man. And like they're like, well, this is for the undisputed heavyweight. No shit. He is the undisputed heavyweight champion. You guys just made this up.
The mandatories and the vacating and it's all a bit.
It is like, Matthew, IBF, I think they're one of the best sanctioning bodies because they stick to their mandatories. There's no, but sometimes they need to use their common sense. Like Usyk is the undisputed champion, and he's already beat Dubois. And they can argue about the low blow all they want. He stopped him. He made him quit, whatever, in conclusive fashion. Dubois hardly ever won any rounds. So he beat him easily, apart from the controversial low blow. So it's not
got
really,
shafted, Chris, didn't he?
It's not really undisputed. I totally agree with you there. But one question I would like to ask, I feel like the mentality of American fighters now is not to get knocked out. They think that's an achievement. Like a lot of that was Ryan Garcia. He felt that power, and not to do comparison. Like in England, like you seen with Chris Eubank Jr. I don't know if you watch Johnny Fisher, Dave. And a lot in Europe, people get knocked out rather than lose. And in America, it seems that the fighter's mentality is if we don't feel like we're gonna win, let's go into sparring mode and survive the fight. No one's biting down on their gum shield and saying, fuck it, I'm going to have a go, try and win. If I win, I win. If I get knocked out. But it seems like all like Garcia, Haney, Shakur Stevenson he doesn't need to because he's talented, but he's not even, when he's so levels above, he's not stepping on the gas, closing the show, giving entertainment. Like they don't want to go above and beyond. Like, why is that? What's changing? All the ones coming.
Yeah, another great question. And I'll give you my personal opinion on it. I call it the Mayweather effect, where it's like
that's what we made a video about it. That's what we called it.
Yeah. So I probably stole it from you guys. So you know, like it's a business for these guys. So it's a business, and like I had a conversation with a couple of the promoters, and we were talking about like fighters, quote unquote, quitting, right? So they were shitting on the MMA guys, and they're like, like boxers would never tap out. I'm like, listen, guys, we can't. It's these guys. These guys don't owe us their lives. This is not. They're not gladiators, like legit.
Sure.
They don't owe us their lives. They owe us the best performance. But that being said, they also owe us to entertain us because we are putting the money down,
indeed,
in their pocket. And I have a guy I'm friends with who's a fighter. I won't say his name, but I had a conversation with him, and I'm like, listen, you have to understand something. Like at some point, you have to start taking some chances. And he's like, well, it's easy for you to say you're not the guy in the ring, and he's not wrong. But I said, but here's the deal. Like Arturo Gatti, Mickey Ward, they were not the two best fighters, right? Neither one of them was the best fighters, but they put on one of the best fights. Actually, they put on three of the best fights, put a trilogy together. I always tell a story about at the local gym here, and I said, look, the only guy who ever beat Floyd Mayweather was Arturo Gatti. And they're like, what are you talking about? Mayweather killed Gatti. But I'm like, yeah, but Gatti got the majority of the money. So it's the only time I think I would bet you if you go documented, that's probably the only time Floyd took the shorter purse in any event. And, Gatti got the bigger purse. Now, who's the better fighter? Mayweather's a much better fighter. It's not even close. But Gatti was entertaining. People wanted to see him. People would pay money to see him. I think that has gotten lost here, specifically in America, where the fighters are just like you just said, they just don't want to get out there and do it. And believe me, there's a lot of exceptions. I know a lot of guys that are like legit tough guys. Another guy from here, he's a local guy, Joe Smith Jr. I love him. Yeah, he went out, Artur Beterbiev. That would have made a lot more sense to maybe box instead of try to take him out. But I give him a lot of credit because he went in there and he tried to do it. And and I don't think he's any the lesser. The other part too is the idea of keeping the zero, like the O. That's the one thing. If you want to learn something from MMA, that's the one thing that we can learn as boxing from MMA. They don't care about that stuff. They want the best fight. Put the best fight on. Because you'll come back. You'll get to fight again. You'll get first off, there's like 1,000 titles, so you could get a title. Like if you're worried about that, but like, these guys want the big. They think the O is a selling point. So, I told you I was with the commissioner Randy Gordon yesterday, and we're talking about Mike Weaver. And Hercules Mike Weaver. And I said, like, boxing needs champions like a guy like that because, like, he was brought in to basically take a loss. And then, 5 seconds changed the world for Mike Weaver and John Tate. John Tate never recovered. His career spiraled out of control. He never really got back on track. And Weaver got to hold not the heavyweight title, but he got to hold a belt for a little bit of time. And I'm like, that's got to be the inspiration for other fighters. So when you have a guy who's 39 and 14 and he'll sneak up on somebody, like that's what you want to see. And boxing is the boxing landscape is littered with the underdog who pulled the impossible, did the impossible, beat people over time. So like, I would like to see that part. I like to see fighters understand that better because, like, beating up a bunch of tomato cans and getting to 29-0 doesn't, versus I'd rather see a guy who's 20-6, but's been in there with a real scrap, and then you stick that guy in the ring, and that guy's going to go. He's going to legit go.
Dave Allen. Yeah. I think the other problem is, Matthew, I don't know, obviously, this is what I want to ask you, being a part of the American media, because over here we have a habit, and especially now with social media, and we're complicit in it, and me and Chris, we are aware of it, but we try to have some integrity and say it as we see it. We try to be, as honest as we can. And, when you've got the whole thing about access, and a lot of the mainstream media, they want to get that access so they don't ask the difficult questions. But when a fighter loses badly, everyone's so quick to write him off. Oh, that's it. We've done it with Johnny Fisher. I know he's limited over here. He's raw, but using him as an example, that's it. He's done. And I think we sort of destroy these guys psychologically and mentally as well. And I know it's something we do over here a little bit. Is that a problem in America as well? Do they tend to kind of destroy fighters if they lose their right? That's it. They're never coming back.
I'll tell you So the answer is it would probably be like that if the American media actually covered boxing. Like none of the big newspapers have boxing reporters anymore. So so the big newspapers like New York Post, the oldest newspaper in this country, they don't have a full-time boxing writer anymore. ESPN has like only a handful of writers anymore. So I think what would happen is, I think that would happen because I've seen it happen in the past. Look, we mentioned Jerry Cooney. Jerry Cooney was, he was a local guy on Long Island. He's kind of a local legend here. He had some problems outside the ring. And like the media, he fought a tough fight. I mean, he should not have been in there with Larry Holmes. He was not ready, but I get it. It's a business and you're going to put 7 figures in a guy's pocket. He's going to want the 7 figures. But like, the media killed him after that. And then they made a joke out of him. And then they made him like he was like a glass jaw and all this bullshit. The guy, who the guy lost to? He lost to Michael Spinks, and he was drunk when he lost to him. And he lost to George Foreman. I don't know, it was pretty good guys. Like, that's a pretty good resume. So
that George landed, no one's standing up to that. Nobody.
And that's what, and like, I think the American media does do that, so to speak. However, boxing just doesn't get the look that it used to get. Joe Smith was fighting for one of the belts, the WBO belt, and like our local media barely knew about it. We called, and it's funny too. I'll tell the story now. You guys, this is an exclusive. So
nice.
We had Joe. So Joe Smith, after he won the title, his father, they own a tree cutting business. And they came here, and Joe pretended to cut trees in my backyard, and the media came to film them. And it was fun. It was just and it sucked because my wife made me go outside and clean the backyard because she knew the media was coming. Joe came and like cut the trees and stuff here. But like we called to get local media to Like, I'm like, this is a great story. This guy's a local kid. He's fighting for a major title, but they just don't get it. They just don't. Wendy Toussaint, he's a bus driver. That's his like day job. So he drives kids on a school bus. And like we got the local press to cover him finally for one of his big fights. And as a matter of fact, he's fighting a turning stone for the International Boxing Hall of Fame weekend. But like getting the local press to cover these, like those guys are local guys. Those are great stories. But like the national press, they don't know. They just don't cover it. There's no stories. Like independent people like myself and NY Fights, and then Mike Woods, who's like one of my he's one of my writing heroes. Abe with Fights Around the World, like all these, like we're like the alternative press, but we're the ones covering it. But I would rather see like
everybody cover it.
Yeah, every week. Every week there used to be like a boxing show on, and then we would, I remember watching on like ABC Sports here in America, and they would talk about the boxing, the fights and stuff during the week. And like, I can't remember the last time boxing was covered on like that was like the local.
Is it the competitiveness with just the others? Because you've got massive sports out there that Americans follow, haven't you? The NFL and the NBA and the Major League. And do you think it's just a case of a number of factors? One, you need a superstar American heavyweight. I mean, even people like Bam Rodriguez, Boots Ennis, who I think is quite like, again, they just seem to sort of, the promotion for him isn't great, even over here.
Look, I that's the one thing I'm excited about this, the thing with, Riyadh season teaming up with Dana White. I think Dana White will do a good job. I know a lot of people in the boxing world don't like him. They think he's a heretic, but I like him. I think he's great. He's going to be great for the sport. We have to make stars. We have to make these guys household names, and that's when the sport will be elevated again back here in this country. And I do think it can happen. And I do think there's a chance, but
you need a John Jones or an Ngannou in the boxing. You need an equivalent in the boxing world, don't you? You need that kind of star.
Yeah, that's why you need somebody that's like a recognized. Look, you need the heavyweight champion of the world. The heavyweight champion of the world used to be the most recognized athlete in the world. If you walk today, 10 people couldn't tell you who Usyk is. 10 people, even with the fact that he gets a lot of press, but they just can't do it.
Yeah. I think that you're right there. I do think that Dana White teaming up and the system that they're talking about, a lot of people are saying that it's going to be bad for boxing, but I agree with you. I think it'll be great. And the only thing is they're trying to take away the Muhammad Ali Act, but I don't think that's a problem. I think that if they have a simple format, like if you get a KO, you get an extra 500,000. If you land this many punches, basically, if you make it an exciting fight, this is what you're going to get. And if it's a stinker, you're only going to get the minimum. Basically, that's the kind of concept. That's the concept they're running with. And I think it's great.
Why wouldn't you
rather than saying, pay me 100 million no matter what, because that's why we're getting all these shit fights. Because they're taking the money and then not trying because they haven't got it in their head. Oh, I need to do this because I'm going to get this. Like, it's just, and I really agree with you. I think Dana White, it could, because the UFC model, the best fight the best, win, lose or draw all the time. We don't have that in boxing, and it kind of stinks.
It does, and it hurts our sport, and it hurts the promotion of our sport, and it hurts a lot of different things. And the fact that these guys are all independent contractors, like and again, that's a lot of that's on them too. Why wouldn't you give it a shot? Like if and if he helps the sport, great. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. But like, why wouldn't you try? It's funny. We also have had this conversation too about His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, and I'm like, look, I, politics aside, and I'm certainly don't want to talk about the politics of this, but like, I don't know. The guy's making the fights people want to see. The fights are on at a reasonable hour. He's getting stuff done. He is having them fight outside of Saudi Arabia. Like, why wouldn't we give this guy the benefit of the doubt until he proves us wrong? And again, I know there's other factors at play. I'm not questioning that. I don't want to get into that. But I think I think that's something that deserves a conversation, and let's see what happens with the sport. But I do want to see boxing, take its rightful place. We were saying before we got disconnected there, sorry about that. Look, the heavyweight champion used to be the most recognized athlete in the world. We need to restore that prestige to that title.
I think you're right there. I remember when I watched Mike Tyson when he first come out of prison. Me and my dad were so excited to watch him fight. We stayed up till 3 a.m, and obviously, I think his first fight or his second fight, where he punched the referee, he was so zoned in that he's going to take this guy out. The referee was like waving his hands like it's over, and he's still hitting the guy, nearly hits the ref. And like, obviously, we missed that, and obviously, it feels like only Tyson's the only person who could, but he's not the only one. But someone should be able to step up.
He just fought when he was like, he just fought when they crushed it financially on that fight, even though the fight was absolutely dreadful. He just did it. He just fought, and that made a big difference because people wanted to see that fight, and they wanted to see him fight. And I do miss that. I remember we didn't have cable TV when I was growing up until I was I think I was in high school when we finally got cable, and watching, like, I remember going to my uncle's house to watch the boxing matches. Like, it'd be like, oh, Saturday night, we got a double header. Like, we got 2 big fights, and Tyson was one of them. I remember watching Tyson on ESPN when he was like appointment television. I remember, it's funny because I just talked to him. I'm excited for him. He finally got into the Boxing Hall of Fame. Vinny Paz and George Foreman were both appointment television for Tuesday night fights. So like, oh, Vinny Paz is fighting this month. You're like, oh, we got to watch Tuesday night fight. George Foreman on his comeback, and he's beating up all of these guys. He's got all these jabronis that he's like just bouncing off the canvas like a basketball. But it was like, we want to see these fights. Like, we got to get back to that. And we got to get back to, getting there and building it up.
And we've got a few, haven't we?
It's been lovely. It's been lovely having you on the show. Hope to have you on again. You've given us a lot of insights and knowledge, so we understand things better. If you just want to plug yourself, like your name, Twitter, your channel, or anything like that, go ahead.
So,
take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, I appreciate it. I'm CEO of Long Island Boxing Charities. Long Island Boxing Charities is we help the local gyms. And we help fighters that are down on their luck. And as you guys are boxing fans, that's pretty much every fighter ever. So it's been a challenge, but we do try to help the fighters that are struggling a little bit. So if you are a fighter in need, feel free to reach out to us. You can go to Long Island. It's LABoxingCharities.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm at Pamara_Matt. And then I also write for NY Fights. You can see, go to NY Fights. Just say that I got coming up is I'm going to write a retrospective on the last 2 shows at Yankee Stadium for boxing. Because there's been 2 in the last 50 years. And then I'm also writing about Tommy Ryan, the fighters of Tommy Ryan, the guys that boxed for him. He was a boxing manager. He was banned for life, but his underlying story, he's the number 2 guy in the Genovese crime family. So those are my next 2 stories. I'm sure I'll do a preview article too here or there. And I am headed up to the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Excited for my buddy Paz and my good friend, the commissioner Randy Gordon.
Nice one. If you send Chris your links, we'll stick them in the description as well, so people can just go straight.
Yeah, because I know I totally botched the LIBC URL. I absolutely botched it. I'm like thinking in my head, I'm like, Jesus, did I just give the wrong one?
Send us the website, the Twitter, and all that, and any links, and then I'll put them in the description. I'll do a few shorts as well. 1-minute videos on YouTube because they circulate a lot quicker. But thank you very much, man. Hope to call you again.
The pleasure is mine. Fellas, thanks so much for reaching out. I really appreciate it. Loved chopping it up with you guys. I got to tell you, that was the quickest, 30, 40 minutes.
I can't believe it. We've been nearly an hour, and it feels like 20 minutes. It's that.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Enjoy it. Take care.